And this African American dude picks it up. And we start looking at this guy. We're like, how did this guy get in here? The guy looks like a homeless. He looks like Buckwheat from the Little Rascals. Little do we know, it's Jean-Michel Basquiat. But I mean, the guy looks, I'm like, who is this guy? And we
Yeah.
see him take the fur coat to the table. So, obviously, there's Bianca, there's Liza, there's Calvin. I believe that night Rod Stewart was there. And Andy, I'm like, who is this human with the crazy hair taking pictures? And I kind of walk by and he goes, oh, you're fabulous. And I'm like, that's the first time like a man pays me a compliment. So I'm like, what is going on?
Bad decisions. Bad decisions. Bad decisions.
Welcome back to the Bad Decisions podcast, where we lead not with celebrity, but with story. I'm your host, Scott Nathan. My next guest was one of the very first people I met when I moved to Los Angeles in the winter of 1994. He was warm, welcoming, affable, and quick to laugh. Some people are known so universally that they're known by a single name. Slash, Madonna, Sting, and Cher, to name a few. In fashion, there is only one Omar. Omar is more than an agent. He's a tastemaker and an arbiter of culture. Welcome, Omar.
Thank you so much for having me, Scotty. You know I'm such a huge fan of your show. I've always
Thank
been a big fan of you. You're
Same.
such an amazing person. I've always been so beautiful to me. So I have big love for you, brother.
Same. And, it's funny because I was only here a few days when I met you, and I came into your agency with George and Scarlett, our old friends, and I saw all these like beautiful people and agents rushing around, and I could hear just these buzzwords in my ear. They're like, get on two for Versace, Dolce and Gabbana, this photographer, this model. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in the nucleus of everything. And it was so cool. And it's funny, 30 years later, we still know each other.
It's time really, there's that expression, time flies. And it just blows my mind how the journey of this industry and how fortunate were we to live the 80s and 90s in fashion. Not only photography, you being a photographer, me being a model agent, but just the entire spectrum of the industry, the models, the parties, the clubs, the restaurants, the photographers, the shenanigans,
Yeah, I want to get into all of that. I always like to start with origin stories. So I read that you're of Bermudan and Ethiopian Jewish descent, but you grew up in Panama. What was your life like growing up?
I was a very fortunate kid growing up. I have nothing but the most amazing stories of my childhood. I wasn't a nerd. I was very shy as a child. And at 9 years old, I discovered swimming. Most people don't know about that. And I joined the national team when I was 11 years old. I was one of the youngest swimmers in the country. And I swam till I was 19 years old. So I had zero notion of fashion, art, entertainment, none of that. My world was my Speedo, what boxes I'm getting from Jansen because they were my sponsors, and what country am I traveling to next for my next meet. So it was from school to the pool, to my home. That was my childhood. Nothing
All
other
right.
than that. So
All right. Well,
yeah, swimming was my thing.
okay. Well, I read, and tell me if it's true, that you were discovered as a model at the fabled Studio 54. That true?
100%. I always say this, and it sounds weird, but I was born the day I was selected from Steve Robel to go to Studio 54, to go in. I had zero idea what was going on in there. One of my best friends who is from Panama, we went to see a play on Broadway. And when
Yeah.
we walked out of the theater, we looked to our right and it was Times Square. We looked to our left. We see Central Park, but we see all these limousines coming out of 54th Street. And we're like, whoa, with these two kids from Panama, we got about $8 in our name. And we see this crowd down the block. And we're like, oh, let's see what's happening down there. And as we were getting closer to the door, we saw the big awning 54. And Ricardo, my friend, looks at me and says, hey, that's the place where famous people go. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, that's that place. And I'm like, well, let's walk around the crowd. I mean, I'm talking, there's 200 people outside. And we just walking around the crowd hoping to see somebody we recognize. And Steve Rubell is up on the fire hydrant. Don't let anyone
Right.
fool you. That's how it used to happen. He used to stand on top of a fire hydrant and pick out people. And he goes, those two right there. And I'm like, me? And he goes, you coming or you staying? And I'm like, we're coming. And he gave us 2 tickets. I mean, mind you, this is 1977. Studio was $20 to get in, I think. And we went in there and we're like, oh my God, we're in.
So
And
tell me, who was there? Tell me some stories.
well, it's funny because as we walk in, listen, anyone who tells you, oh yeah, I used to go to Studio 54, listen, they're talking about Mark Fleischman's Studio 54. None of us ever went to that studio. We went to the
Okay.
original Studio 54, which was only 33 months. Then the boys went to jail. They came
Yeah.
out 2 years later. We had one more party and we're all looking at each other like, oh, it's a wrap. The world has changed in those 2 years. Um, Obviously, that first night, I have no clue who these people are. I mean, that was my
Right.
first time even like we go into the bathroom because we want to count our money to see how much money we have. And we walk into this bathroom and there's these like 2 girls in the bathroom making out. We're like, oh snap, we're in the wrong bathroom. And we go to the other side and there's 2 guys making out. We're like, what in the world is going on here? So we got $8. We got 1 drink, 2 glasses. We split it, put some ice in there, and the rest of the night you're just drinking it with water. But funny enough, someone who's never been in this industry, what caught my attention was the first table on the left. Anyone who tells you they went to studio and they cannot describe who was on that first table on the left, you're lying. You never went
Yeah.
there. The
Yeah.
first table is the table. You know, and I could not keep my eyes off of Halston and Diana Breland. I have no clue who these people are, but I'm staring at them because they were both smoking with the cigarette holders like this. Very, very like a movie, and I'm like, who are these people? But I tell you, the funniest thing was a gentleman caught my attention on the middle of the dance floor. There was this statuesque looking black man, 6'4", possibly he was. He had no shirt on, ripped, tight leather pants, black cowboy boots, and a white fur coat. And he's twirling these 2 ladies. Mind you, one is Bianca, the other one is Liza, but I have no clue who these women are. And
Right.
the dude, he kind of pops his fur coat and throws it on the side. And this African American dude picks it up. And we start looking at this guy. We're like, how did this guy get in here? The guy looks like a homeless. He looks like Buckwheat from the Little Rascals. Little do we know, it's Jean-Michel Basquiat. But I mean, the guy looks, I'm like, who is this guy? And we
Yeah.
see him take the fur coat to the table. So, obviously, there's Bianca, there's Liza, there's Calvin. I believe that night Rod Stewart was there. And Andy, I'm like, who is this human with the crazy hair taking pictures? And I kind of walk by and he goes, oh, you're fabulous. And I'm like, that's the first time like a man pays me a compliment. So I'm like, what is going on? So we stay there till closing. We just stay there the whole night. And we became the most devoted students of studio. Our life revolve going to Studio 54. We had no other, there was no other life for us. Ricky became a designer. He learned how to sew. So every week, Ricky will make us outfits to go to studio, whether it's a pair of trousers or some bomber jackets, whatever. And we started getting into the whole fashion scene. And I believe 6 months, 8 months later, I became friends with this great couple, Lawrence and Arthur. They were so chic. And Arthur was the first one who opened a men's designer store on Madison Avenue. It was called Bellocchio Uomo, Italian high-end designer wear. And he comes up to me and he says, "Hey, man, my friend wants to meet you." And I'm like, he said, "You know who he is?" I'm like, "Whoa, it's a very big known Italian designer." And I said, "What's up?" He goes, "He wants to meet you." And I went over and met the gentleman. And the gentleman says to me, "Hey, would you like to have a drink?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, let's have a drink." But funny thing is, I'm walking towards the bar. He's walking towards the exit. I'm like, where we going, dude? He's like, "Well, I thought we go to my room at the plaza and we'd have a private time." I'm like, "Oh, dude, I'm so sorry if I gave you that vibe, but that girl you saw me dancing with, like, I'm trying to get that." It's like, I'm straight. And he's like, "Oh my God, I offended you." And I'm like, "No, dude, it's cool. I'm flattered, but it's just not my scene."
Yeah.
I kind of bummed, walked away and went about my business. And 3 weeks later, Arthur calls me and says, "Hey, a package came in from Italy for you." And I'm like, "What?" And I go to his store on Madison Avenue. I lived in Brooklyn at the time and came up, opened the package. There was a cashier's check for $750 and a one-way ticket to Milan with his stationery. Says, "Hi, Omar, ciao. I hope you remember me. I will be honored if you come to Milan and walk in my show." I'm like,
Wow.
"Walk in his show? What is he talking about?" He's like, and my friend Ricardo is like, "Dude, you going?" I'm like, "Bro, I'm not a model. I don't know what." He said, "Bro, you going?" Said, "We're not
You
doing
are
anything.
now.
All we do is go to studio, so you going in." I took off to Milan, and my first day in Milan, I had to go to his showroom to get fitted. And you're gonna love this story, Scotty. As I'm getting fitted, obviously I'm Spanish, so I do understand a bit of Italian, a good 30% at the time. I mean, I
Sure.
don't speak it like I speak it now. I speak fluent Italian now, but then at that time I didn't. But the seamstresses were taking my measurements and they were like freaking out on me. They're freaking out. They're like, "Madonna, ma questo non è possibile." And they're taking my measurement and they're freaking out. And then one of them says, "You got to call Claudio. He needs to come and see this." They call the designer. He comes downstairs. He said, "Oh my God, Omar, thank you for coming." Gives me a hug, kiss. And then I go, "Dude, can you tell me what's good? Like, why are they all tripping out on me?" He goes, "Dude, you have the exact measurements as the
Of the
dummies,
sample.
the mannequins." I'm
Amazing.
like, "What are you talking?" I'm like, "Is that a good thing?" He goes, "Dude, you're a mannequin. You like, I don't
Yeah,
even
you're
have
the
to fit
sample.
you. We're sample size." So he goes, "I'm gonna do something for you." And he called Elena Di Castri, who owned Riccardo Guy in Milano. It was a top agency in Milano at the time. I went over there. They took some Polaroids. She called Claudia and she said, "Hey, can we send him out right now?" And he's like, "Hey, yeah, he has my driver. Just take him, he'll take him wherever you need to, you need him to go." And I went on 6 castings. I booked all 6 shows and I did 7 shows my first season and I never looked back. I was averaging, for 4 years, I was averaging between 33 shows between Paris and Milan. Worked in Paris. I got placed with Paris Planning. Started working for Saint Laurent, Cardin, Hester, all the big names. And
Yeah.
that was my life for 4 years, just, being a model between Milan and Paris. But whenever I was free on the weekend, I would fly to New York to go to studio.
Now, was this was before like the Club Hollywood era of Milan? Yeah.
1,000%, which funny
And
that we
that's
spoke
when
about
I
Hollywood.
started going. That's when I started going with Max and whatever the other guy's name is,
Oh
Gianfranco,
yeah. Oh
and
my God, Max.
we had some wild times back in those days.
I was telling someone last night, I said, that was like the first club that I recall that used to pay the girls to come. Like the girls who get $150 and come and party. So you'll have like tables with like 20 hot girls, partying their butts off, and they were getting paid. That was the first club I ever saw that happen. Boy, Club Hollywood
Yeah, and
was unbelievable.
yeah, and all those girls who became LA model girls who I knew from like the beginning here, I'd run into them all there, all because they were all with Taryn's in Paris, and they were all with Storm in London, and I forget what the big agencies were in Milan.
Well, it was they were either with Fashion Model or Model Plan or Why Not Models.
Why
You
not?
know,
Yeah, I remember that one.
yeah, Why Not was like the big Maristela, dear friend of mine. Great
Yeah,
days.
we had a lot of fun. I remember like we didn't sleep for days in Milan, and then a whole group of us, half of whom we had just met, all went to Rome together. And we end up at this fancy restaurant in Piazza Farnese called Camponeschi. Do you know this place?
Caponeschi, yeah, it doesn't ring the bell.
It's like a Michelin star, but old restaurant. And we're with two very famous designers who are partners, who and we finished the meal, and one of them says to me, Scott, that was a very adventurous order for an American. I said, really? What was so adventurous about it? And I took 3 semesters of college Italian, so I think I know everything, right? And I said, what was so adventurous? He goes, what do you think you ate? I said, I'll tell you what I ate. I ate bistecca di cavallino con tartufo bianco. And he goes, and this means? I said, steak with white truffles. He goes, you miss a word. I said, which word? I said, doesn't cavallino mean with white truffles? He goes, no, it means baby horse. So I ate a baby horse at Camponeschi. So now to this day, whenever someone's going to Rome, I always be like, you gotta get the steak at Camponeschi. And then I tell them afterward that they ate a baby horse.
It's funny that, again, I was with some dear friends who came in from Paris yesterday, and we were speaking about, obviously the era that we were all, the 90s. And we're like, where are like today, in today's world, like, where are the characters that we had? Like, we had amazing characters,
Yeah.
whether they were photographers that were known for their characters, or, models, or restaurants that we frequent that were just known for, the hipness of the restaurants and the action that went on there. Like, where did all that go? Like, I don't know. Like, Scott, I always wanted to ask you this because you were one of those guys who worked, but I never knew who repped you.
No one.
You always did it all on your own?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of agents here and there briefly, but my problem with agents was that all those global beauty brands I got on my own, and they would say, yeah, we want all your house accounts. And I said, well, let's eat what we kill. I'll tell you what, let's give it 6 months. Let's give it a year. And if you start bringing in more business than my house accounts are that I depend on to pay the rent, we can talk. And they didn't really like that. And I didn't see a lot of utility in the agents. Maybe I was just unlucky, but I never had anybody bringing in work for me. So I just did it myself.
That's a great way of thinking. I take a lot of pride when I say to people, the models that I've represented, 90% of my guys, I started from zero.
Yeah.
And the guys that were already major stars that joined my company, hey, you do your work, but I won't say, oh, that was an Omar's man. That was not an Omar's boy. Yeah, you were a big model, but I didn't make your career. I like the ones that I made their careers. I don't want to represent you. You're already a big model, and I'm taking credit for your journey as a model when I didn't do any of that work. So I never took pride. I only took pride in the things that I did. And I'm still the same way. I have this expression that I don't know if it's true, but to me, like once an agent, always an agent. Because I'm always looking,
Yeah,
it's normal to me, like to just look at people, and sometimes I look at people and say, like, God, I could fix you. Like, give me a shot and I could fix you. Like, you have no clue how much better I can make you physically, of course. I'm talking physically. I don't, you can't do nothing with the inside. That's up to you. I mean, I could
sure.
throw in a couple of pointers, but I always believe that I can make anyone look amazing in photographs if you give me the shot, because it's all about pairing you up with the proper shooter. I always believe that, like, you have to be able to unite vibes. With me, it's about the
I
vibe.
could not agree with you more, and that's why it's always been very. And look, you know me, I'm easy to work with, but I always was very particular about please let me do my own casting because the chemistry and the trust is so important. And I can tell if somebody like reading one line, like I can just tell from being in the same room with someone. Is this someone I want to spend 10 hours with? Like, can we work together? Will she trust me? I know a lot of
There you
photographers
go.
who weren't any better than a dozen other ones, but they worked all the time because people wanted to clients wanted to spend a whole day with them. They were just good vibes.
Every time I have any kind of consultation with young models, they say, I take to them, I think you'll agree with this one, Scott.
Yeah.
If you look at the body of work of the greatest female or male models, look at their whole trajectory of work. And if you break it down and give it a percentage, I would say that 80% of the work is done by like 5 people, like 5 guys that always
Yeah.
bring them. You think of the collaboration of Linda Evangelista with, Stephen Meisel. Probably Arthur Elgort is going to bring her in. Possibly Watson might bring her in, or a Walter
Mario's.
Chin,
Yeah.
or obviously Mario Testino. It's very, very funny that I always say to people, it's about, do I want to spend 8 hours with this person? You could be
That's
the
it.
greatest model in the world, but if you're a dick,
And
nobody
that yeah,
wants to
and
be
that
around you.
and that goes for crew too. Like I'm not going to name any names, but there was this one hugely talented hair guy that I worked with that I was forced to work with a number of times, and he was a real a-hole. And finally it just got to the point where I was just like, this isn't worth it. Everybody else is good vibes here, and this guy always brings it down. And finally I have him on a music video I'm directing, and he comes over to me and he goes, honey, I don't know if you know this, but lighting for black and white is totally different than lighting for color. And that's what I was, because I'm kind of known for black and white anyway. And I go, you're talking, I hate that. and
Oh my,
and
you
finally
know,
I was like, I'm done with this guy. Like you're always a jerk. Everyone in my crew hates you. You always offend my cast. Like, I'm done. I don't care how good you are. It's not worth it.
yeah, I agree. When it comes to photographers, especially, I built my career on photographers. I have the utmost respect for shooters. And I believe that if you're going to be working with someone, you give them 100% because you're one of the chosen ones and you're very fortunate. Therefore, give it your all, be respectful, be on time. And I'm sorry to use that word, but don't be a dick.
No,
You
you're
know,
not wrong. And it's like, I remember I used to just sort of help out my agent friends from time to time for a little extra work. And then there was this girl that came in from Europe, and they said, hey, can you give her a ride to her shoot? She's shooting a cover of American Marie Claire with Peter Lindbergh. And I was like, oh my God, I get to watch this set for a day? Hell yeah. So we're on our way out to Malibu, to the beach. And she goes, so you know anything about this magazine? I go, yeah, don't you? And she goes, no. She's like, is it like well known? I go, yeah. And she goes, what about this photographer? I hear he's German. Is he any good? I'm like, he's the closest thing you're going to get to meeting Jesus as a photographer in your lifetime.
Yeah.
And then
I,
the Polaroids are getting peeled, and everyone's just like, "Oh my god!" Because Lindbergh was just the master of the gray flannel, black and white, crisp, gorgeous.
it's funny, there isn't a shooter in the world that doesn't admire Peter Lindbergh. You will never hear any shooter, if you ask them, like, oh, tell me who are your mentors or who did you look up to? Trust me, if it is 1 out of 3, Peter Lindbergh's name will come
And
up.
I think his soulfulness is equally important to his lighting and composition. He managed to always bring out feelings out of people.
Because he was real. He was like a real guy, super, super sweet, super accommodating. And, one of the things I preach to young photographers these days, I tell them, have a signature. Please have a signature. Have a reason for a client to want to book you. Oh,
Yeah.
well, I take good pictures. Hey, everybody takes good pictures. Who gives a shit? You have to
Yeah.
have a signature. We come from an era where you remember, Scott, driving down Sunset and you look up at that billboard and you go, oh, for sure, that's a Mario
Mizell.
picture. Oh,
Yeah,
for sure,
100%.
that's a Mizell.
Always. Albert Watson, you
they
could
had a
always
signature.
tell. Yeah.
And that's something that's lacking in today's photography. I just posted something this morning very interesting where they speak about the difference between the world that we grew up and, the world of Instagram, where people it's just overflowing with photos, just photos. They're photos to me. They're just photos that like forgettable. Once you
Yeah,
scroll and you look
they're
at
not
it,
paintings. They're consumables. They're tissue paper.
you know what I'm saying? It's like, you're
Yeah.
not saying anything to me. And I tell you, man, I get melancholic when it comes to that subject. It breaks my heart, brother. It really
Me
does.
too.
I'm not one of those guys who lives in the past. I'm so in today's world, but my God, why are you guys diluting the beauty of models, the beauty of photography, the beauty of styling? Everyone is a stylist. Everyone is a photographer. And this is something I always say to people. The difference between our era and today is, here goes the plus. You could do it yourself. Sounds cool. Here comes the minus, that you could do it yourself. You don't know what you're doing. You think you know. I play basketball every Saturday, and I was with these two very famous DJs. They have a drive-through radio show. And we were talking, and they're like, hey, man, yeah, I just shot this campaign. They paid me X amount of money. And I'm like, what? He goes, oh, that's not good? I'm like, bro, you just got ripped off so bad. They're like, what are you talking about, dude? I'm like, dude, do you know what a media buy is? He goes, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, did your agent break it down to you? He's like, no, she didn't tell me anything. I said, well, there's something called POP, point of purchase, POS, point of sale, transit, billboard, consumer magazine. Hello. Those are
Yeah.
all media buys. A client
Yeah.
has to pay to put those photographs in those medias, and they just gave you 10% of what you were supposed to get. He's like, no
Yeah.
way.
The first question is always, what's the usage?
You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's so simple. Like, what's the usage? How long? And give me the territories. Because
Yeah.
a lot of times, I remember one time being in, oh man, I was in Ecuador. And I'm cruising down the street with my buddy, and I see a cool cigarettes bus shelter. And it's my job that I booked like 15 years before. And of all the people you could have messed with, you don't want to mess with this model. You remember John Enos.
Yeah, of course.
And that's my brother. And I'm like, Oh, hell no. I couldn't wait to get back to America to call the ad agency. And I'm like, hey, guys, I mean, these days we didn't have, phone, we had the razor phones. So I had to buy a little Instamatic and I took a bunch of pictures of it and sent it to the ad agency. They're like, hey, guys, can you explain this to me? Because it's been like 10 to 15 years and I don't remember giving you the release for that. Yeah, they wrote us a fat check for like $100,000. I'm like,
It
okay, now we're
happens all
talking.
the time. I caught a London hotel using a picture of mine that was obviously like blurry and crappy and stolen off the internet. It was framed in a hotel, in a luxury 5-star hotel lobby. And I was like, you guys, what the hell? And they were just like, listen, we're gonna overpay because we're sorry. And they just sent me a check for 10 grand. And I was like, all right, fine, use it.
All
I'll,
right,
I'll,
that's
I'll thank you for not making me sue, and I'm gonna give you a clean print. It's fair.
well. There's
Um,
there's when this is over, later on, you and I are gonna speak because there's something I'm working on where I'm about to get a lot of people in trouble for using images they're not supposed to be using in certain territories. I'm about to
all right.
bust them off because it's not cool to take images that you guys shot 10, 20, 30 years ago, and you don't even know that your image is sitting at some billboard in Timbuktu or in New Zealand or in Japan. They're using it as a counter card, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute,
Yeah. And
So
they don't understand. They're like, well, you already used it. And I'm like, no, this is an asset to us. This is 75 in my prime, 75% of my income was usage, was renewals or,
ah,
or licensing. Um,
ah,
l-
100%.
can we
But
jump back to New
it's,
York? Can we jump back to New York? I want to ask you about some stuff that's making headlines now. And you are a true insider. There's a lot of speculators, but there's a few things I want to ask you about. For one, what was the deal with ID Models and its owner Paolo Zampoli?
you know
Remember?
what? I'm not too familiar with that situation, honestly. Um,
Okay.
I really don't pay that much attention to that situation. I know something went down, but no, I'm not familiar with it. There's very few people that I deal with in New York. Obviously, major models. Nadia Shadik, she's actually my agent in New York. That's my family for over
Right, but I
40
meant back
years.
then. Yeah. Okay.
You know, um, I deal with Ford a lot because I love Sam. Sam is like the last of the Mohicans, just like Nadia. He still makes models. I only pay respect and homage to the people who make models. Take something that's a zero and make it into a hero.
Okay.
Other than
Jean-Luc
that, I really don't pay attention to it.
Okay. Jean-Luc Brunel was credited with discovering Christy Turlington, Mila Jovovich, and Sharon Stone. Started well, didn't end so well. Did you know him or that world?
I knew Jean-Luc extremely well.
Tell me
Extremely
what your
well.
take tell me what your take on that whole thing was.
Listen, Scott, I'm one of these people that if someone spoke wrongly of Scott Nathan, I'm going to step up and say, you know what? I've never been involved in any of that situation with Scott. He's always been decent to me.
Yeah.
Therefore, whatever situation you have with him is your drama, not
Right.
mine.
Right.
My relation with Jean-Luc, and unfortunate because so much bad there is about him, but I never saw the bad. I personally, I told this story just a week ago. I said, I remember being with Jean-Luc. He came to Panama. I'm very much involved with Fashion Week Panama. I remember this beautiful girl who was like 17 years old. And
Mhm.
I was like, this girl is so amazing. And I remember he said to me, first thing he said to me, I want to meet her mom.
All
I
right.
want to meet her mom. And the mom came to meet the next day. So, yes, I've heard all the rumors. Yes, I've heard all the bad stories. Fortunately for me personally, I never saw it. So I can't bang
And
on
it's all
someone.
and the thing that people forget is it's all shades of gray. Like I was having lunch not too long ago with a friend, and it had come up in the news that she used to stay at Jeffrey Epstein's house. And I said, "What was going on there?" And she said, "Listen, Scott, everybody that it was at a certain social station in life was at Epstein's at one time or another. It doesn't mean any of these people at any of these parties that we know knew anything about, child sex trafficking. Like I know people that were at the island. I know people who were at the house, and they were all just like, we didn't know any of this."
It's kind of like the same situation, like the whole
Yeah,
Diddy situation. People like, oh, you've been to those parties? Yeah, I've been to a million of those parties. I didn't know nothing about no freak offs. I never, I'm kind of bummed
exactly,
I never got invited.
exactly.
And as far as like the Epstein's, I went to like two of those parties in South Beach, and I remember even one in New York. I didn't see any minors. I saw a bunch of pretty girls, a lot of models, but I didn't see it. And I'm one of those. If I don't see it, I can't speak of it.
Yeah,
I can't. I am not going to ever be a person that falls into that horrible human being called I heard. I heard is the person that has killed so many people and so many careers. Oh, I
yeah.
heard Scott did this and that. I heard? Who is I heard? Give me a name. Give me a name. Let me speak to that person. And then let's bring Scott on board because there's always your side, their side, and the truth.
Of
And the
course.
truth always comes up. Always. So I only speak of things that I lived and I witnessed. If I didn't witness it, I'm not going with the I heard because I don't know what situation you got with that person.
Right.
You may have a bad vibe with that person from whatever happened between you guys. Hey, that's between you guys. It has nothing to do with me. I know
Of
people that
course.
are so loved by me or by other people that other people will say like, oh, he's a this or she's a that. I'm like, like that with me. So it's up, like you say, it's a gray area. I
Yeah,
miss
yeah.
John Casablanca. I'll tell you that much. I do miss John Casablanca.
Yeah.
That's someone I really do miss in this industry because I love John.
Do you have any memories of Trump models back in the day?
Um, it was such a short term agency. I mean, I think it only lasted a year, 2 years.
Yeah,
Really didn't.
I only knew a couple girls that were rep by them. A Tong, the Somalian girl, the one that looked kind of like Alex
Sure,
Beck. Remember? Yeah, she was
sure.
rep by them. But then I remember I'm backstage at the Marc Jacobs show at the Armory. Couldn't even tell you when it was. 91 maybe, 90 somewhere in there.
Okay.
And I'm with an Italian female modeling agent friend of ours, and she goes, "We have to go, sweetheart." And I was like, "Where are we going?" She goes, "Oh, one of my models has a private tent." And I was like, "There's Giselle, there's Naomi Campbell, there's Linda, there's Cindy. Who gets a private tent here?" And she goes, "Ugh, I don't want to talk about it. Ivanka Trump." And I go, and we're walking through Bryant Park smoking cigarettes, and I go, at the risk of sounding stupid, why is Next representing Ivanka Trump and not Trump models? And she just kind of exhaled a lungful of cigarette smoke and rolled her eyes at me. So I was like, I never knew what she meant by that. She was like, "Please, sweetheart."
Yeah, I never really met any models that were like, oh, I'm with the Trump agency and I'm blowing up. And because as I said, it was such a short term, agency. I believe I knew the head agent there, but I never really, it didn't really make an impact of making models.
Yeah, you say
You
you
get
don't
to
have
a
much
certain,
memory of it.
yeah, it's like you get, like I said, we come from an era that there were so many individuals, characters that were known for their savviness as agents, not more the owners, but the agents. I've always been an agent type of guy,
Yeah.
those great agents of the 90s from the fake Kates, or, Monique Corey, Monique Pilar, Elite, Chris Forberg,
Oh
it's,
yeah,
as I
Chris.
said, Nadia, we all had these agents of it. In Italy, we had Luigi and Tino and Simon. And in Paris, we had Sophia and Patricia. In London, we had, you spoke of Storm Models. That Sarah was
Yeah.
phenomenal, Kate Moss. And then we had Tandy at Select. Select was like the monster agency of London. And Annette from So Damn Tough. We had so many great character agents in those days that it all died like early, late 90s. It just became like, I don't know. I don't even have a word for what it is today. I don't even know who the agents are today. You know,
Right. I want to throw a few of your talent at you, and I want to hear an anecdote, a story. You ready?
go.
Jaimin Unsu.
Oof. Love the man. One of my favorite stories. I first came in contact with Jaimin via Thierry Mugler, because I knew
Yep.
Thierry from when I used to model for him in Paris. And Thierry used to send me photos of him all the time, especially his composite, because Thierry shot the cover of his composite. And I would always say to Thierry, like, Thierry, I don't know what to do with this human. I'm like, this is a time where the African American male models were so classic looking. And I had a model who still till today is one of my greatest joys and love, Tony Coleman. To me, Tony Coleman was like my statue of a male model, the 6'2" rip. I mean, I got Tony doing everything. Tony did from Ralph to Calvin to Guess Jeans. He do everything. And, there was no such thing as a bald-headed model. African, real
And isn't that
African with
funny?
white
Yeah.
nose, big lips. So I really never took a shot at it. And true story, buddy. I was at my office, and I think you remember how I was known always for having two phones. I always had two phones, and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
just going in Spanish, in Italian. Boom, I'm just going off. And a portfolio landed on my desk. True story. Bang! I look up. I am a black man just like you. Why don't you want to help me? I'm like, whoa, whoa, bro, have a seat. I don't want to sit. I'm like, oh, dude, dude, this dude is gonna eat my head off. I'm like, dude, let's have a talk, man. Let me bro, it's not that I don't like you or anything. I just don't know. And it clicked. I went, dude, give me 1 second. Just let me give this a shot. And I call Herb. At this point now of my career, I'm like this with Herb. Herb is
Herb
giving me
Ritz, everybody.
everything, anything male models, Herb will say, just call Omar. And people don't know this, but Omar's New York office was inside of Herb Ritz's office. When I first
knew
opened
that.
New York, I opened
So
inside of Herb's office.
did you set up that Janet Jackson video? Because that was my first discovery of Jaimin. I was
Thousand
like, who is
percent.
this guy? What?
1,000%. That was all me.
That's one of the most
So,
beautiful music videos ever made, I think.
one of the best. So I call Herb and I say, Herb, I need to come see you. Remember he had that studio on Hudson Street in Santa Monica. And he said, Omar, you remember that voice that Herb used to have? Like, Omar, I really can't see you right now. I'm shooting Arnold and Maria. I'm like, no, Herb, I gotta come see you like right now. I need to get this dude out of my office. I'm like, Herb, please. He's like, no, Omar, I really can't. Okay, I'll tell you what, Herb. I'm gonna jump in my Jeep. I'm gonna just drive by. I just need you to take a look over the window. He said, Omar, please. And I'm like, bye. And I get Jaimin in my Jeep and we drive to Herb. I go, fuck it, I'm going upstairs. And we both went upstairs. And there's all this commotion going on in the studios, clothing racks, people walking up and down. And the Herb walks by and goes, "Oh my." The rest is history. Literally, like a week later, he put that octopus on his head, took that
Oh yeah, I
iconic
remember that
photograph.
shot.
That's one of the greatest Herb shots in history. And the career began. I got in with Herb, then I got in with Matthew Ralston, who's still one of my dearest friends. I see Matty at least once a month. And that's how it all started with Jaiman Hunson. And then everyone started cutting their hair. Everybody became bald headed. It's like the revolution of black men with bald heads and white guys. There was a couple of white dudes with no hair that started going bald. And that was the beginning of it all. Jaiman.
Yeah, man. I worked with Jaiman once on a shoot, but was when I was still assisting for Davis Factor. And
Love me some Davis.
yeah, very, very sweet guy. And it was funny the timing of it, because the day before we did a shoot with Jaiman, we did a shoot with Russell Crowe. And Russell showed up pretty surly, like drinking Macallan's out of the bottle, like hardcore Kiwi guy. And he and I got along great because I was drinking with him. But then someone else on the crew, Russell, he handed him the bottle of whiskey, and the guy goes, "Oh no, I don't drink. I've been sober for 13 years." And Russell goes, "We don't have sober in Australia. We just call them pussies." And I was like, "Oh dear." We were all laughing, of course, and we got through the shoot and everything was fine. He was fine. He hit every pose. Russell was great. So the next day, I got to talk a little shit. So I go, "Jaiman, you worked with Russell Crowe a few times." He goes, "Oh, I love Russell so much. He's so sweet." I go, "He wasn't that sweet to this guy yesterday." And he goes, "Oh, really? What happened?" I go, "He was mean to this guy right here. I thought it was hilarious." And he goes, "He wasn't drinking, was he?" I go, "Oh, yes, he was." He goes, "Oh, Russell's not nice when he drinks." And I'm like, yeah.
That's too funny. Yeah, no.
It was all
Big
good, though.
love for Jaiman.
Yeah, okay, so let's do a couple more. Antonio Sabato Jr.
Wow. How funny is it? I am speaking with him today.
It's
Today,
funny.
I'm going to call Antonio.
I've
Antonio
never
reached
met
out.
him. Go ahead.
Did you ever meet him?
I've never met him, but he reposted one of my stories on his Instagram a couple days ago out of nowhere. But I've never met him. But I was just like, "Oh, Antonio Sabato Jr. is sharing one of my
Well,
crazy stories."
a lot of people don't know this. Antonio's father was known as the Clint Eastwood of Italy, spaghetti westerns.
No way!
Big
Like the
action.
Sergio Leone films?
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, his dad was a huge Italian actor. Antonio was a great one. I do not remember who introduced us, but I do remember him and I sitting in his car. He was possibly like 17, 18 years old. And obviously he found out I spoke Italian. We started chopping it up. I fell in love with him from jump. And he was an easy one for me. I mean, I blew that guy up in a matter of like 2 weeks,
You
So
got
I
him
had to
that big Calvin Klein underwear thing?
Oh yeah. I mean, from
That's what I thought.
Calvin, he got to work with Herb. He worked with all the masters. I mean, that was an easy one. Antonio was an easy one for me. I had him in
sure.
LA, then I just opened New York, so I brought him up to New York only on direct bookings, big bookings. And then he became an actor.
Yeah.
Became an actor and started doing his thing as an actor. I had many dinners with his family. They used to live above. I think I remember was somewhere on the west side. It could have even been Marina del Rey where they used to live. And his dad and mom would cook up a great Italian meal. I met his sister. I love him. He reached out last week and he said, "Hey, couple of people are hitting me up to do A, B, or C. And what better situation than to do it with the guy who started my career?" And I'm like, "Really?" So I'm like, "You know what? Let's set up a meeting." And he said, "Let's talk on Monday." So I'm calling Antonio today.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Tyrese Gibson.
Oh, my brother. Family. Another great one. So I met him in my living room.
Mm-hmm.
I used to go to work, and whenever I left the office, I would go, I would drive to Poinsettia Park, get a game, because it was packed. So I would say, oh, who got last? Okay, Omar, you're 2, 3 games down. And I say, okay, I'll be right back. I'll go home because I live close by on Curzon, put on my gear and get back to the courts. By the time I get back, it's time for me to play. And my buddy, Dennis Grubbs, Denny D, the first human I ever met with a computer back in the 80s. This guy had a computer. And Denny D was in my living room with Tyrese. And I'm like, he's like, yo, oh, it's the dude I've been talking to you about. And I'm like, wait a minute, you the kid in the Coca-Cola commercials. And he said, yeah, that's me. I'm like, yeah, Brad Johnson. Remember Brad Johnson, ex-Roxbury, Georgia restaurant? I said, Brad had called me about you. That way, you ball? He's like, yeah, I got game. I said, all right, so come on. Throw on your sneakers and let's go. So we went and ball, went to Poinsettia Park, literally third play of the game. He busted his ankle, so he had to sit on the side. And I tell you, he was a handful because he used to come into the agency banging his first hit, Sweet Lady. I mean, every day when he would come in the agency, we're like, oh my God, please lower the volume. He would be singing his Sweet Lady hit. And how funny, his first job I got him, hello, get ready for this one, drum roll, vroom, was with Willie. When Willie
Really?
was shooting for Skechers. Willie
Wow.
gave me the booking for Tyrese. I got him some money. And then the second booking I got him was with Bruce for Tommy Hilfiger. And I mean, I got him a pile of money for that. Yeah, I got him a pile of money for Tommy Hilfiger. And then, of course, you know, the Sweet Lady became a huge hit. He did his first album and his singing career. So Tyrese had a very small modeling window, but
Right.
a A-list plus quality career as a model. You know, I would say 90% of my talent, yeah, we only did A-list. Could you call me a snob? Absolutely. I've only worked with the best. If you weren't up to par in terms of a master shooter, I really didn't care to book my models with you because I wanted to I took pride in getting quality. Remember that we base models' rates on the caliber of their work, the caliber of the shooter they're working with, and the caliber of the tear sheets. So for me
Sure.
to get great tear sheets, I needed to know that signature that my models needs. So when I make that card, you remember the composites that we send in the
Of
messenger,
course. The
you
old
know, go
Z
drop
card.
this at Scott Nathan's studio, go drop this over at Matthew Ralston. It had to be quality. So I always stuck with the masters. I was very fortunate to be able to speak a few languages and be able to connect with photographers. I was more of a photographer's facilitator than a model agent. You know,
Yeah.
someone asked Mario Testino one time, you know, what's this whole relation you have with Omar? Like, you always get your guys from Omar. Is it because of his eye? And Mario said,
Yeah.
no, not at all. He said it's because Omar knows how to match people. That's
Yep.
always been my thing, is matching people's vibes. There's no way in hell I'm going to send a girl to Scott Nathan who has an attitude, who thinks she's better than anyone else, or she's snobbish. I'm like, Scotty's gonna throw her out the door the minute she walks in because he knows he's not
Yeah,
gonna be able to
but
vibe with
also
her.
but also you know everybody's aesthetic taste too. And you know, you would also know not to send me, you know, like a tan swimwear girl because it's just not my thing. I always like to do this elevated, elegant, sophisticated, sharp. It's not that I think one thing's better than the other, but photographically there are certain people that speak to me and you understand it just like there is for everyone, you know?
One of the things, like when people say, if we weren't doing this podcast and someone said, tell me about the type of model that you would have in mind for Scott Nathan, I would say, well, definitely, she would have to be in shape. She would be physically very beautiful, not editorial. Because people make a mistake when we say an editorial girl. An editorial girl may not be the prettiest girl. She's a great model editorially. You're going to get great images out of her. You could make incredible composition, but that editorial face may not sell product. Scott Nathan's girl is a girl that could definitely work for Revlon. Definitely, when he's done with her, she's going to get pictures that she could send to Revlon. She could send to Estee Lauder. She could send to Catalina Swimwear or a
Right.
Janssen, because he's going to shoot her healthy looking, outdoors. I always remember your outdoor work more than your indoor work.
Interesting.
Um, and I always remember your photographs always having life. Your photos always had life, where you could see there was a
Thank you.
camaraderie with your subject. And that to me always caught my attention. Like your photos always spoke. They're not just pictures. They spoke,
Thank you.
and you could tell that it was a collaboration between you and your subject. You gave them that beautiful lighting or mood, and they gave it back to you with their performance. It was a performance, but it takes two to tango. So
Yeah.
I always looked at your work as someone who keeps it. It was always been clean. You're
Thanks. Yeah.
definitely not limberish. You're not limbered. You're not a Helmut Newton type of girl or lighting. Your stuff was always to me more. I put you on the same boat, believe it or not, with the Francesco Scavulos,
Thank you.
Bill
Oh,
King back in the days. Even I would even say something like an Arthur Elgar, where the photograph, there's movement, there's a situation, there's something happening, and of beauty. The element of beauty has always been very poignant in your work, I believe. That's just
thank you.
my take on it.
Faces are my first love, and
Yes.
I loved the edgy editorial girls. The problem is, I started in LA, and a lot of it had to be selling the right tool for the job. So for these mainstream hair and makeup brands, I couldn't use an edgy, big nosed, heroin chic, cool girl that I really wanted to shoot. Just I knew my clients here weren't going to buy them. I can't book them for Target or Disney or any of these other, Sephora even.
Well, you brought up a really interesting point when you said that, because it's funny. There are photographers out there who wish they had your accounts. But then you got a guy like yourself who wishes he could just shoot more edgier, more editorial girls, but that wasn't your bread and butter. So you had to go
No, I
with
had
your
to
bread
keep
and butter.
I had to keep the lights on. I didn't have rich parents like most photographers. I had to eat.
And that's interesting. It's the same thing with models. You have models who say like, "Oh, I want to be able to do more catalog." I'm like, well, that's really not your thing. You're thinking of like, I remember guys that I had that worked for J. Crew, who will put in 60 days a year of J. Crew at 2,500 a day. You do your math. That's a
Yeah,
great client to have.
big
So
money.
some of my editorial guys, they're like, how come I'm not working for J. Crew? Like, dude, you're not all American. You're not the guy that looks like
You're
you
not
came
that
off.
thing, or Abercrombie's, or all the
You
girls that
know
used to
what I'm
fly to
saying?
Wisconsin to do calls and make a shit ton of money to 21
And
days with calls.
it's more
And
of a campaign phase. You might get lucky with a campaign more in Europe than in America. That's another thing. It's like, where are the great campaigns? When you thought of America, obviously, you always think Ralph Lauren, Calvin, clothing wise, Ralph, Calvin, Tommy. We used to have Nautica. Nautica was a great
sure,
campaign back in the days. Perry Ellis used to do great campaigns. Just very few designers that we had available for campaigns in America. So you really did have to go to Europe to develop, a great book and to get the campaigns. And I believe even today it still remains. Because, right now the campaigns you see in America, I see what's, influencers, whatever that means. I
yeah.
don't really know what that means. Influencers. And, it's like, okay, go to Europe, go get some tertiaries and then come back.
It's different times, man. I don't know what the future looks like, but if history has taught me anything, it's that what we think doesn't really matter. It's movies don't look as good as they used to. No one cares. Records don't sound as good as they used to. No one cares. Photos don't look as good as they used to. No one cares. I mean, I care, you care, but it's become a commodity, unfortunately. And I hope it turns around.
I have these conversations with my mother transitioned many years ago in 1999 at the time, the minute 11:11, which is my tattoo, 11:11. And she reaches out to me pretty often via that minute, 11:11. And about 2 weeks ago, she reached out to me and she said, "What is happening to the world?" And I said, "Mom, the world got in a hurry. The world got in a hurry. Everything is so fast now that
That's it. And look, I understand the economics of it. Like, it used to be a campaign lasted for a quarter, for 3 months, so they could spend a lot of money on 4 pictures a year. But now everybody wants 1,200 pictures a year. It's survive the day on Instagram, not, and look, there are still billboards out there in Times Square and on Sunset Boulevard. But photographers are like doctors. They never retire. And the same people who were shooting those billboards for these luxury brands 20 years ago still are. But I know they're not making the money they used to. And
well,
I knew that the magazine was
I'm
gone soon.
I'm going to argue that point with you a little bit more deeper.
Okay.
Not the masters. The masters are not working like they used to because number one, they don't want to be insulted with the rates that are being offered. And I tell you that as you know, I'm friends with possibly a good 90% of the masters of our era. Dear friends, and I talk to them all the time. I keep in touch with many of the masters, and they all have the same thing. They're like, "You kidding me? I haven't worked in 2 years. I haven't worked in 3 years. I actually just got offered just about 2 months ago. One of the biggest masters, I'm not going to mention his name, he called me up and he's like, "Hey, I just got this liquor company and this is what they offered me." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding." I mean, they offered him like 25 grand, like buyout. It's like 25 grand. That wasn't even half of my day rate to show up. And
I know.
that's the whole thing, is that everything is diluted. So the masters now, listen, unless you made your money in the 90s and you didn't make
That's it.
smart investments, you got problems. I have a master that I'm going to be speaking with today, Hoyt Richards, famous male model, one of my dearest friends. And we have he hooked me up with someone, one of the biggest masters out of Europe. And, we talked on WhatsApp this morning. He said, "Can I give you a call later?" Because he's thinking of coming to LA. And I'm like, "Bro, no, don't do that." Like,
No more
this
Ice
is
Age
the
here.
90s. Yeah,
It's
like
not
this is not
happening.
the 90s. People in today's world, they really don't have, I don't want to put anybody down saying they don't have the knowledge of what a great photographer is, but to have the respect to, when you bring in a master into town, give him the respect and pay him accordingly. Don't insult him with.
And for me, it's never even been about my day rate, but they'll say, "We like X, Y, and Z that you did in the past, and we would like something like that. But we only have $1,500, and that includes like a dozen retouched images." And I said, and I tell them a story. So one time early on, I was doing a test at Smashbox in Culver City. And I walked outside to smoke, and I see Ben Simone there, who I'd never met before. And I was just like, "Oh my God, Gilles, legend." And he goes, "What are you doing in there?" And I said, "Oh, nothing." And it was just like me and a model. And I was like trying to not have him see inside the room. He goes, "I'll tell you what you're doing here. You're doing nothing." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "Let me tell you something, kid. If you don't have the best hair, the best makeup, the best wardrobe, and the best model, how are you going to knock someone like me off the fence post?" And I never forgot that. And it's true. It takes a village. No one gets anywhere alone. And no matter how good I think I am, without my at least one photo assistant and really good hair and really good makeup and really good wardrobe and really good model, you're going to be disappointed in the work because it takes a village to make a photograph.
Gotta have a team. I always tell
Yeah,
people
and
you gotta have a
that's
team.
why as much as I like to work, I don't want to do substandard work.
Yeah, no, it's everyone that I know that's been a master, they have their team. There's many masters out there that I know that they only showed up when everything is ready. And all they used to do is click. Everything
Yeah.
else was there for them. They didn't have to worry about the hair, the makeup, the film, the lighting. Everything was set up. They just need to come in and do their magic. And that's it.
I I,
I
I
tell you,
used to
I tell you,
go
one
ahead.
of the things that blow my mind about today's world, um, I had lunch with a model a few months ago. She came in late to the lunch, and I'm like, hey, come on, man, you let me wait in like 30 minutes. Omar, I'm so sorry. I was shooting e-commerce. And I'm like, what time did you get started? She go, oh, my call time was 7 in the morning. And it's now like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I go, how many pictures did you shoot? She go, oh, today was an easy day. We shot 50. I go, whoa. Run that by me again.
Yeah,
She go, yeah,
yeah.
we did 50. I go, you did 50 shots? For how much? 1,500. She goes, well, sometimes
Yeah.
it goes up to 3 grand. I'm like, let me tell you something. In my days, if you had any of my girls or guys working and it was more than eight shots, they'll be on the phone to the agency like, hey, they're trying to keep me for more shots. I'm calling you immediately like, Scott, um, it's time and a half after certain amount of shots. Oh, yeah,
Absolutely.
no problem.
Absolutely. I would do 3 shots a day on critical beauty. Like if it was a lash where you need to be really precise, we do 3 shots a day for 3 days. But like I'll tell you a funny story. So I used to share a photo assistant with Helmut Newton, and he worked for a lot of people too. Very talented guy. And he told me an amazing story that they were shooting the gatefold for the Vanity Fair Hollywood issue in the garden at Chateau Marmont, where he shot a lot. And it was just 8 hours of hair, makeup, wardrobe, and every A-list movie star, and then like 3 layers of bleachers, and them all lined up there. And Helmet shows up with his Hasselblad just like this one, and he goes, "Okay, everybody, 1, 2, 3, click. 1, 2, 3, click. 1, 2, 3, click." And he goes, "Thank you, everyone." And Graydon Carter freaks out. He goes, "What are you doing? You only took 3 pictures." And Helmet said, "I got it in 1. I just took the other 2 to make you comfortable." He goes, "What if someone blinked?" He goes, "Nobody blinked. I saw." And so then the assistant says, "Mr. Newton, do you want me to run this film to LA Color?" And he goes, "No, there's 10 perfectly good frames on that. We'll use it at our shoot tomorrow, then bring it to the lab." And Graydon Carter is just like, "F that. Give me the fucking film." Because he's old school. He's like wartime. He didn't waste film and he didn't waste time.
Yeah, that's. Give me your take, Scott, because obviously you come from the film era.
Yeah.
Film versus digital. Let's hear your take.
Oh, it depends on the right tool for the job. I'm not a snob that thinks that film is the ideal tool for every job. The film, if I have to shoot faces, I'll take film 8 times out of 10, unless it's something that has to be crispy, like crisp hair, crisp eyelashes, sparkly eye makeup that's going to be retouched and made to be larger than life. But editorial faces, always film, because sharpness is not your friend. Film grain, that ricey looking thing, it covers everything. And then, our friend Jared Land from Red Cameras, when I first started using those, I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, oh my God, these are so sharp. I could see into people's souls. What am I going to do? So I had this friend, Bob, who was an assistant director for David Fincher, who, did Seven and Fight Club and all those great movies. But I was like, Fincher's images look amazing. So I called Bob and I was just like, how do I soften the air and the light? Diffusion isn't enough. How do I make beauty light with a red? And he goes, "Oh, dude, get a hazer." And I go, "What's a hazer?" And he goes, "It's a very light fog machine, and Fincher uses it in everything." So I rented one from Coyote, and it had a little key fob button that I would just keep on the crank of my tripod and go, pss, pss, pss. And it was just like a light smoke in the air, and it just made everything soft and dreamy. So, but if I was shooting product, if I'm shooting cars, if I'm shooting lipsticks, digital for sure. If I'm shooting diamonds, digital for sure. You want the dynamic range, you want all that detail. So to me, it's all about the tool for the job. And oftentimes I'll do that trick that I picked up from Annie Leibovitz's documentary, where I'll shoot a job digitally, but at the end of every setup, I'll do one quick roll of 10 frames with my Mamiya or my Hasselblad, and then
I
at
know
the
many
end, look at
people.
them both.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see what works.
Okay, I have two questions. I know that you're interviewing me. I'm going to ask you two questions. One,
Sir.
what's up with you and guys? You will never know to shoot that many guys. What was
Here's
that
the thing.
about, or what is that about?
It's that old saying, you chop down one tree and everyone thinks you're a lumberjack. So I've shot a fair number of guys, but people would be like, "Do you shoot guys?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I shoot guys." To me, it's easier to shoot guys. It's so much less fanfare, and it's about the relationship. It's just that people think of, I never even wanted to be a beauty photographer, Omar. I wanted to be like Annie Leibovitz or Mark Seliger. I wanted to shoot Rolling Stone covers because I'm a music guy. But because I worked for Davis and my first campaign that took off was Too Faced with Katy Perry, I booked all the beauty brands. It was just, and then Dita Von Teese brought me in to do her book of beauty. So I became the beauty guy by sheer accident when I never wanted to. But I just, the universe decided for me that was what was going to happen.
Okay, my second question and last question I have for you. Outdoor or indoor?
I feel most I'm a bit of a control freak, so I really like the process of cutting light and being meticulous and not changing circumstances. So I think I'm a studio rat, but not too much of it. It's also
Interesting.
like, if I lived in Paris or London or New York City, where the whole city is a softbox most of the time, where it's naturally prettier light, I would do it. But there's really only two times a day, as you know, that you can shoot in LA most of the year, and that's first light and last light, because the whole middle of the day is just bright and sunny and
Super.
contrasty and unflattering. So if I'm outside during the day, I've got to fly an 8x8 silk. I might have to fill it in with some strobe. So it's work to shoot outside. But you walk around New York City, or even like Herb Ritz's, I associate Herb Ritz's career with Malibu winter light, where it was like that soft diffusion with a pop of strobe. Like, I could shoot there, but in Hollywood around here, you can't shoot all day here. So
It's funny because that's what I was going to bring up, Herb. I don't know if you remember, but to me, still one of my greatest, I don't want to call it an achievement, was one of the greatest glories of my career was that Herb shot me for the Gap campaign. And it's still one of the greatest photos
know
that
that.
I have. And I remember when he called me to shoot that, dude, he took 3 frames. I was out of there
Really?
45, 50 seconds. I was out of there. And it was literally around this time. It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon with a hot ass sun. And I'm like, yeah, it's never going to happen. Couple months go by and my buddy's in New York. I'm in my office in New York and my buddy's like, dude, you're large. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, "Dude, I'm staring at you on Times Square." I'm like, can you imagine if we had social media these days? Like, I have a big ass giant billboard on Times Square for the Gap shot by Herb. But Herb it gives you now like a perspective on his genius that he could make something so beautiful with this crazy LA daylight that we have that is so hot and most photographers run from it. And he made it like his backyard, like such a brilliant, brilliant photographer. I swear, I think of him weekly. And he's so deep in my heart, Herb.
He was one of the most important influences for me, even though we're always been very different, but I always had the deepest respect and admiration for him. And photographers can be a competitive lot, but I never have been. I've always been like, okay, I know who all the books that are on someone's desk, and if they choose me, it's not because that I'm better than any of these other guys. It's just I have a different voice than the rest of them. And if they want to choose somebody else, they just wanted that thing. It's, I don't personalize any of it.
And let me take you back. Do you remember the once a year Herb Rich parties?
I think that was before my time.
Buddy, that was, forget Oscar weekend, forget the Vanity Fair parties. Herb Rich parties was the old, I mean, it was Fort Knox for the average person to get in.
Yeah,
They could
I'll
not
bet.
get in. The greatest parties ever. Definitely, hands down, the Herb Rich yearly parties. I mean, I remember that's when Herb introduced Tony Ward to Madonna. I remember that party was at the Santa Monica Pier. I mean, I remembered again, John Enos going out with Madonna. That would be a Herb. I mean, I had Herb made a dinner for my mother. I never forget. It was my mother's first and only time in Los Angeles. She came to visit me. And Herb says, I'm going to set up a dinner for your mom at my house up on Hillside. And I drive my Jeep and my mom is next to me. I pull up and she goes, oh, which apartment does he live? I'm like, no, Mom, that's his whole house. She's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And it was such an epic dinner because I'm talking like Mickey Rourke is sitting next to my mom. Kim Basinger is like across from me. I think Cindy was there. Marissa Menslansky, the great photo rep, was there. Sir Ben Kingsley was there at the dinner. We had such an amazing dinner. So, I mean, that just to show you the love that Herb had for me. And he was so amazing to me, bro. He never cast. He would just, Rhea was his rep. Rhea would just call me and say,
Rhea
okay,
Rashevsky, I remember.
Rhea Rashevsky, she would call me and say, okay, these are the dates. We got Versace from the 24th to the 28th. Well, he's going to take Olivia for that, so you don't have to worry about that. From the 1st through the 5th, we're doing Evian Water. And then from the this to the that, we're doing Ferré campaign, which I think I got Antonio Sabato on that. And I would just get dates and put the faces. And Herb will never question. But before I leave, I got to tell you a funny Herb story.
All right.
I have many, but this is one of my favorites. I had a young boy that I discovered in New York in the hood, Freddie Cotes. Unbelievable face, but the little shit was only like 5'9". So I meet him in New York, in the hood, playing basketball. I bring him to LA. Herb was getting ready to shoot The Gap. And I took some Polaroids, not me, but whoever I had take the Polaroids of Freddie, and I sent it over to Herb. Herb sent it to The Gap, and they booked him to shoot us in Hawaii. It was Helena Christensen, I believe Cindy, and Stephanie Seymour. So Freddie goes out to do the job. I get a call. I'm like, we don't have cell phones, So they're calling me at home like, Omar, you need to get to the office because Herb is calling and they're freaking out in Hawaii over Freddie. And I'm like, what the hell did he do? So I get to the office, I call, Herb says, Omar, you never told me he was 5'9". I'm like, what's the problem? He said, Omar, he's 5'9". The client is losing it. They're thinking of canceling. You're going to have to pay for the entire production. We're talking about these days, it's like 120 for the production. And I'm like, holy shit. I go, okay, Herb, this is what I need. Like, please do this for me, Herb. Frame the shot and just have your assistant put a couple of the boxes.
Apple boxes,
So the apple boxes get like 2
Always,
loads
you just shoot him cowboy. Yeah.
And
3/4.
And I said to him, just frame it and have the client look at the frame. If they don't like it, so be it. I'll pay for it. Dude, they never called me. And that became a billboard on Times Square with Freddie and Elena Christensen for Levi's. It was for Levi's.
But
Beautiful photograph.
Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, Tom Cruise in everything, the Apple Box is your friend when there's a height disparity.
You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, you just work it out.
that was
Omar, I
one of
got a
my.
job. We're way over. We're 220, but thank you so much. Let's do it again another time. But really appreciate. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure with you, Scotty. Love you, brother.
The Bad Decisions podcast was produced by Brock Workman of Her Dad Entertainment. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. My book, The Big Book of Bad Decisions, is available for purchase wherever books are sold. A special thanks to today's guest, Omar Alberto, for joining me. I'm your host, Scott Nathan. Thanks for listening.